Jaden Daniels was drafted second overall, and he was my 10th best player in the draft. Historically, first round rookie quarterbacks average a nice 69 PFF grade, which would be good for 26th out of 45 quarterbacks that played 20% or more snaps last year. So, with that said, he has the potential to not be so great year one, but he also has the chance to be pretty darn good, as most people did think he was the second best quarterback in this class. I thought May was a little bit better, but I was also just a little bit higher on May than the consensus was. I didn't think that Daniels was a bad player by any stretch. Daniels has great athleticism, which is nice because they don't have the greatest offensive line in Washington, particularly as it pertains to run blocking. So he should be able to help with their efficiency and running the ball just by being the great athlete that he is. The one thing that worries me about Daniels is he does get hit quite frequently, and when he gets hit hard, which is worrisome because he's not the biggest bodied quarterback either. But with that said, I think that he can probably learn to take less big hits and be more conservative as a runner as he progresses as a quarterback. So that should hopefully not be too big of a worry down the line. At backup quarterback, Marcus Mariota is a fine option. He's a very low-end starter, so he's a pretty solid backup option. He doesn't have the greatest arm, but he does have good athleticism, so he can do some similar things as Daniels can in the run game and just scramble pretty efficiently as well. Obviously, Daniels is the guy, though, so if Daniels goes down, which obviously you'd hope doesn't happen, Mariota is going to be a pretty clear downgrade. The O-line for Washington was roughly average. They were 14th in pass block win rate and 22nd in run block win rate, which is an ESPN stat. Compared to last year, they should be a bit better. Cornelius Lucas is a lateral move from Charles Leno, perhaps even a slight upgrade. Sadiq Charles is improved upon by Nick Allegretti, who is a very solid pass protector. Tyler Biadasz is also an upgrade over Tyler Larson, so they did make a pretty good upgrade at the Tyler position. So they've made some real upgrades across the board almost. And the guys they've kept are solid as well because Sam Cosmi is perhaps their best offensive lineman. I think Biadasz might be their best this year, but Cosmi's definitely in the conversation. And Andrew Wally is also a pretty solid option. He wasn't the greatest in Kansas City, but he's been pretty good in his 1 year in Washington. Their depth is all right on the inside, but possibly lacking at tackle. Michael Dieter is a solid center, and tackle Brandon Coleman might be something as he was drafted in the third. The average third round tackle averages a 60 PFF grade, which would be good for 62nd out of 89 tackles. So that on average would suggest that he should be a pretty solid backup option. But you never know with third round picks. That's just on the cusp of being sort of a lottery ticket. And I don't want to bank on him being great as a backup option because of that. Regarding their weapons, they're all right, but probably not a strength. Terry McLaurin was 34th in yards per game and 43rd in yards per reception, so he's a legitimate number one receiving option. He definitely would have greater numbers if he played with a better quarterback because Sam Howell was not very proficient in his first year, even though he did put up some decent passing yard stats. He just overall wasn't the greatest of quarterbacks to have. Jahan Dotson isn't a guarantee at number 2 wide receiver, as he was solid his rookie year, but struggled this year, being 94th in yards per game and 81st in yards per reception. Dotson at his best is a really solid slot option, though, that can definitely move the chains and complement McLaurin well, because McLaurin is a solid intermediate to deep threat, and Dotson is a solid chain mover, so they should play well off each other. It's just going to be a question of how good Dotson is this year, because having one great year and one year is hard to project for what he's going to be this year. Speaking of being hard to project, Luke McCaffrey was drafted in the third, and the average third round rookie wide receiver averages a 65 PFF grade, which will be good for 68th out of 102 wide receivers. So he should be solid, but again, with third round options, you just never really know what you're going to get. Zach Ertz is a solid option too, being 11th in yards per game among tight ends and 27th in yards per reception among tight ends in 2022 when he last played serious snaps. Ertz is definitely at the tail end of his career, so I'm not expecting the greatest of things from him, but as evident by his stats the last time he really did play, he's not a bad option by any stretch, and he is not going to be asked to do too much because the receiving options are pretty good. It's just not the most ideal situation because, again, he really hasn't played too much in the past year, so it's hard to project what he's going to be. At running back, Brian Robinson was 23rd out of 59 in PFF grade. He is super physical at 6'2", 230 pounds, so he's a great power back in that sense. He's super hard to bring down, even for linebackers, because the average linebacker is about that size. So Robinson is really physical and is just about as big as the average linebacker at this point, so it's hard to get him to the ground. Depth-wise, Ben Sinnott is a tight end they drafted in the second, and he has some potential as the average rookie second-round tight end since 2019 averages a 64 PFF grade, which would be good for 23rd out of 46 tight ends. Austin Eckler is a big name at running back, but I fear his wheels are falling off as he was 55th out of 59 in PFF halfback grade. So even though he is recognizable, especially for those that play fantasy, as he's been just an absolute monster in fantasy throughout his career, I don't think he's going to be the same player, as I think he's just starting to slow down with age. But overall, they don't have the worst weapons. They have some talent across the board, and they have some potential as well with some youth as well. At cornerback, the Commanders are lacking. Benjamin St-Juste ranked 82nd out of 127 corners in PFF grade. He is super physical and good in the run game at 6'3", but he lacks an overall coverage ability, so he's kind of the opposite of what you would want. Ideally, if you're going to be good at one thing, you're going to be good at coverage as a cornerback, but at least he does have something going for him by being a good run defender. That's something you don't often see for cornerbacks, but at 6'3", it makes sense that he's good in that regard. Somewhat oppositely is Emmanuel Forbes, who was graded 112th by PFF. He struggles in coverage too, but his greatest struggle is against the run, as at 6'1", 180 pounds, he gets pushed around a bit. He has elite 4.35 40-yard dash speed, though, so if he's able to develop some weight and develop his technique as a coverage player, he could be great. It's just going to be a matter of what Forbes we get, because he was very good in college and struggled mightily out of the gates in his first year in the pros. So if he can be more of what he was in college, he's definitely somebody to watch out for, as he has almost limitless potential with his great athletic abilities. And lastly, their nickel Mike Sanderstill was drafted in the second this year. Second round corners since 2019 averages 60 PFF grade, which means he would be on pace to be 86th in cornerback rankings. Sanderstill is a bit better than the average second round cornerback, though, so he might exceed that expectation. He is a very prototypical nickel. He's great against the run. He can blitz a bit. He's great in coverage. He is a do-it-all nickel that I am pretty high on. At safety, they aren't particularly good either. Derek Forrest, I believe is how you say his first name, ranked a nice 69th out of 95 safeties in PFF grade. He is solid against the run, but poor against the pass. So again, kind of the opposite of what you would like for a defensive back. If you're going to be good at one, be good at coverage. And Jeremy Chin was graded 75th out of 88 safeties according to PFF in 2022 when he last played serious snaps. Like Forrest, Chin is at his best defending the run and is particularly good in the box. So they have some blending of skills, as Chin can be near the line of scrimmage and Forrest can be deep. Still, though, they aren't the best fit together since neither are strong against the pass. So it's not the greatest mashing of players, but it's all right because Dan Quinn is going to play a lot of cover 3 and cover 1. So Chin at the line of scrimmage is going to be there quite often, and Forrest is going to be the deep safety a lot of the times. So it's not a bad blending in that sense, but again, it would be nice if they were a little bit better in coverage. Regarding their defensive back depth, Jartavius/Quan Martin was ranked 55th out of 95 safeties. So arguably he should be a starter for them because, at least according to PFF, he's better than Forrest and Chin. Percy Butler is a solid fourth safety too, and Michael Davis is a fine cornerback 4 with potential to be more than that. So they have depth at least, even if they don't have the greatest starting talent. On the D-line, Washington is rather strong on the interior, but mediocre on the edges. Dorrance Armstrong finished 62nd out of 122 in edge pressures, despite being merely a rotational guy for Dallas. He's solid against the run, too, so he has some real value. Cleveland Farrell ranked 67th for edge pressures. He is poor against the run, despite being a big edge, so he is truly a limited player, but you could do worse because he's about average, as evident by being 67th out of 122 for edge pressures, so he's not the worst option. Jonathan Allen was 14th out of 142 in defensive interior pressures. He is very poor against the run, but is one of the best interior pass rushers in the league, so I'll take him on my team any day of the week. He is super good when he can pin his ears back and just get after the quarterback. Deron Payne is nice to balance out Jonathan Allen. Payne is also good, being 33rd in defensive interior pressures, but what really makes him nice with Allen is he's solid against the run, so he and Allen balance each other out and form one of the better interior duos in the league. As for their depth on the defensive line, Dante Fowler is a really good pass rusher, ranking 59th in edge pressures despite having very few opportunities for Dallas. He's awful against the run, but he can at least get after the quarterback. Lastly, Johnny Newton was drafted in the second, and he has a ton of promise. The average defensive interior drafted in the second since 2019 averages a mere 56 PFF grade, which would be good for 87th. But Newton is a very promising rookie that could easily exceed that rank because a lot of people thought he was going to be a first-round pick. So I think that the sky's the limit for their defensive interior. They have proven players in Allen and Payne, and then they have the upside of Newton as well, which is great because they should all be fresh when they're rushing the passer, and they should all have their strength to defend the run. So I think they have a really good trio of defensive interior players. This may sound crazy to you because Washington is not a great team overall, but the linebacker core for the Commanders is exceptional, perhaps even the best in the entire league. Bobby Wagner ranked 7th out of 82 linebackers in PFF grade. He's as good as anyone against the run, can rush the passer at a high level, and is solid in coverage too, so long as he isn't tasked with covering too deep. Overall, he is still an elite linebacker, so he's a great linebacker 1. And Frankie Louvu was 10th in PFF grade. He's probably the best pass rushing off ball linebacker in football. He's great against the run and is good in coverage too. He truly is one of the most versatile linebackers in the NFL. The depth at linebacker is also very good, as Jamin Davis is one of, if not the top linebacker 3 in the entire league. He can't cover very well despite being very athletic, but he is good against the run and is good at getting after the quarterback too. In all, Washington is missing several key pieces, but they have some talent. Jaden Daniels is an excellent prospect at quarterback that will be a great runner and potentially a great passer as well. His O-line is probably going to be roughly average, perhaps a little better than that, and his weapons aren't great, but he has a legitimate wide receiver 1 in Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, who has a ton of potential, reliable tight ends, and a good running back in Brian Robinson. Defensively, their defensive line is quite good on the interior and possessing some pass rushing prowess on the edge, so there's something to like there. Their defensive backs are very weak though, as there's basically no one that's guaranteed to be a solid option. And firstly, their linebackers are as good as anyone's, so they will be one area that definitely have a strength at. Those are my thoughts on the Commanders. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section below, and also be sure to like and subscribe for more NFL content.